Tonight's presentation is Making Peace with Anxiety, Perspectives from a Cancer Survivor. We welcome Sarah Fenlon-Falk to her very first presentation with Prostate Forum of Orange County. Here's her link to her website. Here's what we do for those of you who are new to Prostate Forum, monthly presentations led by top experts in their fields. And you get to know your treatment professional prior to signing on the dotted line. You get to see a variety of treatment professionals. Information from when to start detection, PSA and digital rectal exams, to mitigating post-surgical effects such as incontinence and erectile dysfunction. Zoom meetings of our active surveillance, newly diagnosed group, and advanced metastatic cancer group to provide information, discussion, and hope. By the way, it looks like we are entirely Zoom for the foreseeable. We will. There's a unanimous opinion on behalf of the board of directors that we will be on Zoom, and if you get to a Zoom meeting, we're here for you. We don't provide medical advice in our groups. We share personal experiences. Both our groups are led by Dr. Charles Metzger, who can't be with us today. He is stuck in Florence, and Ira Caggett, who's here. Here's our website, prostateforum.org. Get to know the website. It's a great website. And Brian McAvoy, who handles our engineering for this, the Chief Technical Officer, will have all kinds of videos on there going back years. All of our services are free of charge. And sometimes Dr. Metzger has a newsletter on Saturday. How we run our meetings, our experts will present for about an hour. We will take your questions via chat box when our presenter concludes. And we may ask you to clarify your questions. Please mute yourself during the presentation. It controls for background noises like barking dogs and ringing phones. During Q&A, please remain on mute unless you are asking a question. We are delighted to welcome Sarah Fenlon-Falk, a licensed therapist in the state of Illinois. She earned her master's degree in social work at Michigan State University. As a therapist and life coach, she has over 30 years of personal experience in the process of healing anxiety. In addition to private practice, she has worked as clinical program events coordinator at the Cancer Support Center in Homewood, Illinois. She has also worked as medical social worker, as a member of Keywood Counseling Center, and with the Presence Home Care Service. Ms. Falk has personal experience with multiple cancers. In 2015, she made the difficult decision to have a bilateral mastectomy as part of her treatment for stage 3 HER2 plus breast cancer. She is author of several books, and she blogs at the following. I think without further ado, I am going to turn this over to Ms. Fenlon-Falk.
Thank you. Well, good evening, and thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to getting the opportunity to share with you. And in my bio, I say I've had 30 years of experience in learning how to heal anxiety. And I say that because I did not know that I was an anxious kid until I became an adult with high anxiety and became a therapist as an adult, and looked back at my life and thought, oh, wow, I was an anxious kid. This isn't something new. I was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 17. That was my first cancer experience. I had osteogenic sarcoma, which is bone cancer, in my left femur. And so my senior year of high school was in the hospital and going through chemotherapy. I was considered a pediatric, and they treat pediatric cancers very aggressively. So I was inpatient for that year, most of the year, and had surgeries. And I'm thankful and blessed to say that I just celebrated my 30 years bone cancer free. So now you know how old I am. But so actually this year was 31, because in 1992, I completed my treatment for bone cancer. But since then, as you heard in my bio, I have been diagnosed with breast cancer and have had chemotherapy and subsequent the surgery, the bilateral mastectomy and breast reconstructive surgeries. And I've had 2 different types of skin cancer since then as well. So my history, my experience with cancer is varied and extensive. I don't like to put that on my resume necessarily, but it has actually been part of the experiences that have helped me learn how to heal anxiety and think differently about anxiety. When I was just before I was diagnosed with breast cancer, well, actually, probably several years before, I was newlywed and I was working at the Cancer Support Center. And I loved this work. I had gone to college for this work. I wanted to support cancer patients and their families because I knew what it was like to go through it. And I thought, who better to support the cancer community than me? You know, someone who's gone through it and seen all these things. Well, when I was working at the Cancer Support Center, I noticed I was having these episodes. And I'm a mental health therapist, and I'm not able yet to identify that I'm having panic attacks. So I'm diabetic, and I'm thinking I'm having low blood sugars because the sensations are the same. I'm feeling lightheaded. My hearing goes a little fuzzy. I feel jittery. These are all symptoms of a low blood sugar. And I'm not putting together, oh yes, Sarah, panic attack too, right? So I'm in session with a nurse who is caring for her dying father. And I start to feel this sensation coming on. And so I'm like fanning myself and I'm trying to be calm, and she's getting concerned. And I said, oh, it's okay. I just think I'm having a low blood sugar. Well, she didn't wait. She called 911 and sent me to the emergency room via ambulance. She's like, we're not messing around with this. We're sending you. When I got to the emergency room, my blood sugar was high. So it registered to me in that moment, like, I didn't catch that. Sarah, you're not having low blood sugars. You're having panic attacks. And I had to take a really hard look at what was happening. And really what it was this, my stress reaction, which I'll share with you in a moment more about that. My stress reaction was triggered because all day long, I was listening to cancer stories. And so my stress reaction was like, get out of this, no more stories. And so I had to quit my job, sadly, because it was a dream job for me. But I had to quit my job because I had to recognize I could not sit with those stories all day long. It was just a little too close to home. So this is where I began really diving in and learning more about anxiety, where it comes from, how to manage it and heal it for myself. And then once I really got a handle on it and was able to manage it better, I started sharing with other people how I had been able to heal it so that they too could experience that. So the first thing I like to say when we're talking about anxiety is this: we're not ever going to get rid of anxiety. In my counseling practice, I have so many people come in And everyone in my area knows I specialize in anxiety and panic disorders. So they come in and I ask them what their goals are, and they say, to get rid of my anxiety. So the first thing I want to say to you is you won't. You won't get rid of your anxiety. And here's why. Anxiety is a built-in survival instinct for you. We all have it, and we all experience it in different ways, like on a spectrum almost. Some of us, maybe the spectrum's like this. Some of us have low anxiety, and we get a little nervous when it's time for our checkup, or I know that there's a term that's floating around out there in the medical world of scanxiety, right? So we might get a little bit of that scan anxiety, but some of us, we have high anxiety, and it's most of the time, so that when we do have to go and get our checkups or talk about our cancer experience, we are heightened. We have a hard time focusing, or we feel it in our body. And so we have these high anxiety experiences, maybe not panic attacks, but maybe panic attacks. When you're having a panic attack, just so you know the difference, anxiety attack is, I can't calm down. I feel jittery. I can't calm down. I can't collect my thoughts. Panic attack is, I think I'm going to die right now. Panic attacks tend to last a short amount of time, but feel like they last forever. Anxiety attacks, they feel long, and they can be long, but you don't get so heightened that you think you're literally going to die and you go to the emergency room. A lot of times people will go to the emergency room because they literally think they're having a panic, or they think they're having a heart attack, or they're having difficulty breathing. So they'll take themselves to the emergency room. So there are different levels of this experience called anxiety. But where does it come from? We have this built-in survival instinct, like I talked to you about, and it's housed in this teeny tiny little part of our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is for emotional regulation and reaction. So any perceived threat in your environment, or any thoughts of danger or threat, like oftentimes I'll have clients who just ruminate on the what ifs. So anytime you're ruminating, your amygdala is going to catch up and be like, whoa, warning, any perceived threat in your environment can trigger that amygdala and set off the stress reaction. So what is that like? The stress reaction sets off this warning system in your body, and there's actually a chemical reaction to this alarm system. So the amygdala says, warning, warning, and these chemicals are released in your body. Stress hormones called adrenaline, which you've probably all heard of, and cortisol. And when cortisol is elevated in your system, your blood pressure, your heart rate, and your blood sugar are all going to be elevated. So you can imagine that if your cortisol level is high consistently, meaning your blood pressure, your blood sugar, and your heart rate will be elevated for longer periods of time as well. You can imagine some of the other medical implications of this high anxiety. So when your doctor tells you to manage your stress, he's not connecting the dots for you, but this is why. This is why, because that cortisol level being high it really can be detrimental to your health if this is heightened for an extended period of time. So when I talk about anxiety, the first thing I like to do is to interject some gratitude here. I personally am thankful that my survival instinct is working. you know? So if there was a moving vehicle coming my way, I would jump out of the way. And that cortisol would give me that little boost of energy that I need to just get out of the way. And so we have these reactions. And so what I like to say when I start feeling anxious, and I encourage all of my clients to practice this as well. When you start feeling those sensations building up, I like to say, I know what this is. This is my survival instinct. This is my stress reaction. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but there's nothing to see here. I'm not in immediate danger. See you next time. And I find that shifts my brain. It really shifts my mindset, because if I start to feel this anxiety building up and I tense up and I'm like, no, not right now, or I don't want to feel this way, I'm actually like feeding into that tension. But if I can switch that just a little bit in my mindset and say, wait a second, nothing to fight against. I know what this is. This is just natural. It's okay. I'm not in immediate danger. So thank you for, being here. Thanks for trying to keep me safe, but there's nothing, I'm not in immediate danger. It provides just a moment for me to just really like positive reinforcement, or positive affirmations, I guess, where I'm able to tell myself that I'm safe. Because when we're experiencing anxiety, it really is this sensation of, in some way, I'm not safe. Like there's something wrong. And it's not necessarily always the case. It can be just what we are imagining, like, what if this happened? And so that's where this gratitude helps us kind of shift our mindset a little bit, and interjecting gratitude really helps with that. So if your cortisol level is high, if you are stressed out, if you did get news at the doctor's office that was really stressful for you, if you do have to go to, have tests done, or it's your annual checkup and you are like experiencing this anxiety, there are things you can do to help bring that cortisol level down. And here's the thing. Stress reaction is involuntary. It's a reaction. You don't control it. It'll just be triggered. But relaxation, you have to be intentional to seek relaxation. And there is an occurrence in our body called the relaxation response. But we have to be intentional to activate it. It's not instinctual, which, if you think about it, is a good thing, because our species probably wouldn't have lasted too long if our instinct was toward relaxation. When the saber-toothed tiger came along, just kicking back and getting ready to pet the cat rather than running away, that would have been an issue. So you can see where it makes sense that the stress reaction is survival. But we want to activate the relaxation response, because in our society today, we're constantly triggered. You don't even have to be a cancer survivor to have triggers. But those of us who have survived cancer, or who have cared for someone with cancer, we have more triggers. We've got the medical triggers on top of like all of the societal triggers. And a lot of the triggers we kind of take for granted. The things we put in our mouth, for instance. There are things that we probably drink or eat or use every day that can increase our cortisol level. Things like, and this was hard for me, caffeine, because I love my coffee, But ever since I learned that caffeine will increase my anxiety, I have drank decaf. Sugar, another hard one for me, especially in the summertime, because I love my ice cream. Cannabis, alcohol, and tobacco. And I've had some pushback on some of those things, the cannabis and the alcohol, especially because I've had clients say, now, wait a minute. I have to do this. I have to have my glass of wine at night. I have to have my cocktail. I have to have my last cigarette. It's the only thing that calms me. Or I have to smoke weed. It's the only thing that will center me. But what happens is when our body metabolizes that cortisol or those chemicals, it can impact our cortisol to increase it. And so I just encourage people, okay, just pay attention to how you feel 1 hour after having your wine or, smoking your last joint. Notice how you feel 3 hours after, because oftentimes my clients will come back and say, "Ooh, yeah, 3 hours later, I was really agitated." Cortisol increase. So I encourage you as well to just think about, and it could be any chemical, to be honest with you. It doesn't even have to be just the ones I laid out for you. Sometimes food sensitivities can cause our anxiety to increase. So just pay attention to what you're putting in your body and also what you're exposing yourself to. Some things that I found for myself that I had to cut out was watching the news. Can't do it anymore. Like, I can read about it and it doesn't have that same dynamic impact on my survival instinct, and then I can get the information I need and I can ration it a lot better than watching it. And especially with, we all know how things have been divisive and explosive in our world in the last couple of years. So, oftentimes TV or entertainment wants to kind of feed into those emotions. And so distancing yourself or limiting some of those things can be very helpful to managing your anxiety. Other things that you can do to significantly reduce your anxiety, other than just watching the triggers, is, and this you've probably heard a million times. And as a therapist with 4 young boys, they've heard this a million times. And every time I say it, they roll their eyes and they're like, I know. And so if you are thinking, okay, Sarah, I know, that's okay, but I'm going to teach you how to do this right, because not everybody knows how. And that's take a deep breath. And I'm going to explain to you why that's so powerful and why that if you don't do anything else, if you don't do any other relaxation practices, breathe deeply. And here's how. Find your belly button and then put your hand underneath your belly button. And that's where you want to breathe. You want to breathe down deep. You don't want your shoulders to rise and fall with every breath. You want your abdomen to expand and contract with each breath. When you do that, you are actually stimulating nerves in your abdomen that can activate the relaxation response. And when the relaxation response is activated, what happens is there is a chemical released called acetylcholine. And acetylcholine is going to help bring that heightened cortisol level back into balance. So taking a deep breath is the most powerful, most underrated thing you can do to help bring that anxiety level down and the cortisol level back into balance. There are other things you can do. And again, we talked about what you put in your body, and there are foods that actually help to reduce the anxiety and that can calm. And so blueberries, dark chocolate, avocados, those are just a few things that I always have blueberries on hand. I always do. And dark chocolate, don't get me wrong. Dark chocolate too. But that deep breath is like, that's going to give you the impact. And here's the way I talk about it with my clients is it's like building a muscle. You want to practice it all the time. If you wait until you're stressed out and like on the verge of a panic attack to employ your deep breathing exercises, probably not going to work well for you. And I've had clients come back to me and say, yeah, I almost had a panic attack and I tried your deep breathing and it did not work. So I've had to kind of preface this homework exercise with, you need to practice this daily. And managing your anxiety does require, it does require daily practices, but daily practices that are really soothing and really helpful and really make you feel better. So they're easy to incorporate. And once you start feeling better, then you want to do these things. You look forward to doing these things. So anxiety is not our enemy. It's actually our ally. Part of the survival instinct to keep us safe. And we should be grateful for that. We can just invoke gratitude and change our thinking about that. And when we start feeling anxious, we can remove triggers or walk away. We can do our deep breathing. When we know we have a scan or a doctor's appointment coming up that's making us a little nervous, maybe we need to do a bit more and do things that we know will relax us. Reading, writing, and oftentimes journaling. And journaling, I want to say, just put your thoughts out. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be like eloquent. Just put your thoughts out. Get them out of your head, because if you're leaving all of those thoughts to roll around in your head, sometimes that can increase those what if thoughts. And then there you go, your amygdala is going to be triggered, and then we've got cortisol all over the place again. So managing those thoughts and kind of putting them on paper can be very helpful. And there are other relaxing practices that use breathing and movement that I often recommend to clients. One of which, my favorite, is actually Qigong. That's Qigong. And if you look up Qigong for vitality on YouTube, that's my favorite instructor. And in 8 minutes a day, you will have a very soothing, relaxing practice to help bring that cortisol level down and to calm your mind. And it's just really gentle movement coupled with the breathing. And that will help keep that cortisol level down, keep it in balance, so that you are able to maintain and not be so nervous. So I love Qigong. It's very simple. I do it during the school year. I do it every day with my boys before school starts. That's the last thing we do before we leave for school, is we practice Qigong. It's just anyone of any age and any physical ability can do this. And that's partly what I love about it. So deep breathing, Qigong, reading, journaling. These are all things that can keep that cortisol level in balance. But again, not to downplay how important it is to pay attention to how you feel after you eat certain foods. And I never thought about this until, I was exploring with my anxiety levels, what foods might be sensitive for me or not. And one thing I realized was, okay, I'm allergic to mold. And when I started researching foods, there were certain foods that I ate all the time, and they are like, they have a mold component to them. And so once I cut some of those out, peanut butter being one of them, which was so sad, but I've come to love almond butter now. But once I let those go, it was interesting how my system reacted, because I cut out peanut butter for a week and then I reintroduced it just to see, because after cutting it out, I thought, I don't know that I feel different. I can't tell. But when I reintroduced it, I did not feel well. So when I cut it back out, then I could recognize, oh yeah, that was the difference that made. So paying attention to your body's cues is so important for rest, right? If you're tired, how many of us push past when our body says enough is enough? And we're like, I got to keep going. I got to keep doing. I got to keep thinking. But if we would listen to those cues, that would help keep things in balance as well. But we push through and we kind of stress ourselves out, stressed our systems out in that way. So one of my favorite lines that I give to all of my audiences is, self-care is not self-indulgent. It is essential. And oftentimes we think that if I take time for myself, or if I do something self-care, pertaining to self-care, it's selfish. Like I shouldn't. I need to think of others, or, this person needs me, or I should be doing that. Self-care is not self-indulgent. It is essential. It's essential to keeping those stress hormones balanced, keeping ourselves from other health issues that a heightened cortisol level can instigate, right? So please consider the practices that helps you relax and helps you de-stress. Oftentimes I'll have clients say, oh, when I want to relax, I just go to my room and I get on social media and I scroll through. I say, oh, really? And do you feel better after you do that? And they're like, no, not really. Because we associate numbing out with relaxing, but that's not what I'm talking about. Numbing out, sometimes you need to, sometimes you do. You need that little period of just zoning, just watching your favorite movie and just being okay with that. But that is not a relaxing, like a relaxation response activity. It's more just a shutting it off for a little minute. So, and honestly, what most of my clients find is that social media, just like the news, is actually activating and triggering rather than relaxing the way that they thought it might be. So allowing yourself a little of those things that you still want to engage in, but recognizing that they aren't helping you relax, or recognizing what actually is triggering to you, and then putting really healthy boundaries around it. Like, okay, I can't watch more than 10 minutes of news, or I can't be on social media for more than 10 minutes because it's too much. And then just allowing yourself, to relax in real intentional ways. And even if that's just laying in bed and breathing deeply, that's great. That's great. And like I said, breathing deeply, that abdominal breath down into your belly, below your belly button, and expanding and contracting that abdomen, that is the most powerful way to bring that cortisol level down. So all these things I'm talking about, the gratitude, the deep breathing, the mindset shift about anxiety, these are just little daily practices. And breathing, how many times do we like catch ourselves holding our breath? I do that often. So what I try to do is I try to put in my own triggers. For instance, I encourage my clients, like in the morning when you are doing your hair or brushing your teeth or whatever, pause and take a few deep breaths. When you're laying in bed and you stretch out and you're ready to go to sleep, take several deep breaths. When you're driving somewhere and you're at a red light, let that be a reminder to you, a trigger. Take deep breaths. So whatever you can use to kind of remind yourself, deep breath, post it on your mirror, or, whatever it takes, practice those deep breaths. And finally, spiritual. There's a spiritual practice that I like to share and that I have encouraged clients to use. No matter what your religious affiliation or your spiritual context or beliefs, we all can practice this. Because with anxiety, we can't just focus on our thinking. We can't just be positive thinkers and the anxiety will go away. No, because there's a chemical reaction. So we have to try to activate the relaxation response and bring the cortisol level down. But also our spiritual self needs some attention as far as anxiety is concerned as well. At the beginning of my presentation, I told you that I would start to feel tense and I would want to fight that feeling that was coming up, like, no, not right now, not now. This tension and this tightness, this is the posture of anxiety. And I learned in a very intense moment as a newlywed, my husband, I waited a very long time for my husband. And I had always wanted to be married. I never wanted to be a social worker. I just wanted to be married. And thank God I went to school anyway and became a social worker. And after a number of years of working in the field, finally met my husband and married him. And as my panic attacks were getting worse, I had a horrible panic attack in my bedroom. After kissing my husband goodbye, he went to work and I had the worst panic attack probably ever. And I thought, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. But there was a voice that said, you're not afraid you're going to die. You're afraid he's going to die. And in that moment, as I'm tensing up and so just scared, I recognized, yes, I was afraid that this husband I love dearly, that I had waited my life for, could be taken from me at any moment. As a cancer survivor, I feel, okay, like I just had my oncology checkup 2 days ago, and I'm like, okay, could be today, who knows? And don't we all have those thoughts and feelings sometimes, like, when's the next, diagnosis, or when's the next whatever. But as I stood so tense, holding that, in my spiritual context, I recognized I had to let go. And for me, what that looked like was I had to say, okay, God, I can't control everything. And thank you for my husband. And I recognize that he's yours before he's mine, and I can't control any of this. So I had to learn to hold things loosely. And for everyone, that looks different. I understand that there are many different spiritual beliefs and religious practices, probably even represented on this call. But for you to come to a point where you recognize, this anxiety is going to keep you like this. And this is not a good posture. It will not help you. But this posture of surrender is what I call this. This letting go, this surrender, and saying almost like whatever will be, will be. And I'm all right with that. I'll control what I can control, but then I need to let go of the rest. Because this posture will help to reduce your anxiety. When we're in this posture, we're constantly thinking, what if, and how can we're trying to prepare for any eventuality, or we want to control everything. And then we have trouble in our relationships because we're trying to control everything, or we end up not being relational at all because we recognize we can't control anyone and we don't want a part of that. So learning this practice of holding things loosely, this posture of surrender, can be supremely helpful in helping you to reduce your anxiety. So mind, gratitude. This anxiety is just trying to keep me safe, but there's nothing, I'm not in imminent danger. Thank you for trying to help me. I'll see you next time. The body, taking our deep breaths, trying to bring that cortisol level down. And the spiritual practice of holding things loosely, the posture of surrender, just recognizing what we can control and being responsible for it, but then also letting go of those things we can't control and learning. And it's a practice. It's a practice. I didn't do it that once and then be done. I had 4 babies. I had to surrender my husband, and now I have to whoa, this is even more that I have to learn to hold loosely. So we all have those things that we have to learn to hold loosely and to recognize our limitations. But all of these things will help to heal our anxiety. So now I would like to take a peek at your questions, if that's okay.
Please. I want to thank you, first of all. A lot of people don't realize this, but not all psychotherapists are particularly skilled with dealing with the leading reason for seeing a psychotherapist, which is anxiety. Mm-hmm. And even fewer, and generally speaking, when you find one that's skilled with dealing with anxiety, it's because they've experienced a lot of it themselves. So thank you very much for sharing your personal experiences. I think it makes you a stronger therapist as a result. And can you see the chat right now? And if you'd like to read this, if not, I'll read it for you.
Sure. So suggestions to prep when you know an upcoming event will be anxious. Yeah. Again, that deep breathing, that abdominal breathing, if you can practice that all the time, I think that that's great. Even more so when you know you have this anxiety producing event coming up. For me, journaling about it, or even thinking okay, what's the worst case scenario, Sarah? What are you going to do about it? Kind of asking myself these questions. What can I control? And what do I need to hold loosely? What do I need to let go of? That's to me, those are the things that help me. I would just encourage you too, Joe, to find things that you help you to calm down or focus or center. Another thing I like to do is have quotes posted or for me, scripture posted, like just things that build my faith or build my positivity. Just so that I call it an infusion of positivity. That's what I tell my clients. Like if you listen to podcasts, only listen to the ones that get you excited or lift you up. If you watch movies, only watch the ones that you enjoy. Don't watch anything sad or dramatic. You know, all of the, anything that's positive and lifts you up, builds you up, just immerse yourself in it. And that will help with the mind, and your breathing will help with the body, and journaling through what can I control and what do I need to just hold loosely can help you to work through that spiritually too. And Mike is asking, Mike and Tina are asking to repeat the Qigong site link. I'll put it in the notes here. It's Qigong. It's on YouTube. Qigong for Vitality on YouTube. And I wonder if I could, maybe I can grab the link for it. But Jeffrey Chand is a Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine doctor, and a Qigong practitioner. And he leads, just his voice alone is just so soothing. But I love it because he does short videos, and he'll do it for specific things. Like he'll do Qigong for anxiety. He does have that. And I share that with my clients, or Qigong for deep sleep, you know, different things. So I really like his channel on YouTube. And then O'Brien is asking, so the breathing you recommend is belly breathing, correct? Abdominal breathing, yes. Pushing the belly out, not intercostal. The way I like to think about it is this. If you think about your breath going down to fill up your belly, so you fill up your belly, then you fill up your lungs, and then pause and slowly exhale. You can exhale out of your nose or your mouth, whichever feels the best for you. That's what I'm talking about. So you just don't want your shoulders to rise and fall, because that's just indicating that you're breathing rather shallow. Is that answering your question, Brian?
Kind of. I was taught for drama to breathe intercostally so that I have a full lung. I don't raise the shoulders, just I can deliver a powerful speech with intercostal breathing. But what you're talking about is what they used to call bad breathing for acting. But I understand that because it's a different part of the body.
Right. I used to teach diaphragmatic breathing, which is probably what you're talking about, because then you can project your voice.
Yes.
With that kind of breathing, that muscle, like just above your belly button.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I like to talk about is that abdominal, that belly breathing, because the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in your body. And it comes out of the base of your brain, and it wanders along both sides of your body and connects with your gut and back up again. And the vagus nerve, one of its roles is to activate the relaxation response. So when we're taking that therapeutic deep breath, that belly breath, we're actually stimulating the vagus nerve and hopefully getting it to activate the relaxation response. And that's why we teach that belly breathing rather than this diaphragmatic breathing, like musicians use. Or
they call the intercostal diaphragmatic breathing is what you need to be an actor or project. That's not what you're talking about.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. Right.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And Ira, does walking exercise help you to breathe? I think you have to be very intentional about breathing into your belly. It doesn't come naturally to us. We actually, if you just pay attention to your breath right now, just how it is, you're probably breathing right here. You're probably feeling it right here in your chest. So even when we're walking and doing exercise, we're not necessarily doing this belly breathing. So we do have to be very intentional, and you can do it while you're walking. And in fact, walking is my best exercise because I've had so much work done on my left knee and femur, and I've got a titanium rod in my leg. And so for me, walking is my exercise, but even still, I have to focus on the belly breathing. But yeah, you can do it while you're walking. Does that answer your question? Does that work?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any
Uh,
other
Yes.
questions?
Let's talk about sleep for a minute, because one of the things that's just great for eliminating anxiety is good sleep, and yet the metaphor for anxiety is sleepless nights.
Mhm.
So how do we get good sleep without getting meted up on a lot of medication?
Yes. Very good question. So I encourage my clients to have bedtime practices, really good sleep hygiene, which means being off of screens about an hour before you want to go to sleep, because the blue light in your phone, on your TV, that's behind that screen actually signals to your brain to release serotonin. And serotonin is like the wake up chemical, the happy chemical. So you'll be stimulated. Depending on what you're watching, you're going to be stimulated. And so trying to get off the screens an hour before you want to go to bed. If you find your mind is racing, I love doing brain dumps. And it's messy journaling, basically, where you are writing everything that's in your head in as few words as possible, just to get it out of your brain and onto the page. And there's something psychological that happens when your eyes see your hand writing a list, and it's reading this list. It's able to say, okay, all of this has been taken care of. I can let it go. And you can close the book and walk away from it and go to sleep. So I find that that's a really good practice for people with racing thoughts. And then again, I recommend a very scheduled routine where you're going to sleep and waking up at similar times, that you have similar times when you shut the TV off, get your pajamas on, take your last drink of water, brush your teeth, all of those things. And that's letting your body know it's time to relax. It's time to unwind. And then when you get into bed, taking those therapeutic deep breaths. And we do this because we know that the therapeutic deep breaths, that the brain dump or the journaling, that the getting our face out of a screen, all of these things are going to help to bring our cortisol level down. Why is that important? Here's why it's important. You might say to me, Sarah, I don't have trouble going to sleep, but I wake up every night around 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm awake and I don't know why. Here's why. I'll tell you why. You've got a capacity for cortisol. And if you go to bed after a busy day or your doctor's appointment or whatever the case may be, and your cortisol cup is almost full, and you're like, oh, I'm exhausted, I just want to go to sleep. You don't have your hygiene. You don't have and by hygiene, I don't mean like washing. I mean, you've got that schedule, right? So you watch TV right up till bedtime, and it was like an intense movie, and you go to bed at a later time and you just crash out. Melatonin has washed over your brain to help you get to sleep. And a lot of people use melatonin supplements to help them get to sleep. But guess which chemical uptakes in your system to help wake you up just before dawn? Cortisol. So if you went to bed and your cortisol capacity you're almost at capacity, and cortisol uptakes just naturally. You're awake. And usually it's around 3:30 in the morning. So this is why it's really important to de-stress before you go to bed, to have these practices in place where you're bringing that cortisol level down so that cortisol isn't waking you up too early or disrupting your sleep. So that is the best information or the best practices that I can recommend, that regular sleep wake time and those practices before bed that are just going to help bring that cortisol level down. Any other questions?
I think that another thing that we have found that creates a lot of unnecessary stress with patients is poor communication with their medical service provider. And one of the things that we do here is clear up a lot of things. Your suggestions, perhaps, for talking with your doctor or nurse about your care, and how do you know when it's time to change doctors? How do you know when communication isn't getting better and you need to go somewhere else?
Right. Well, I'm the queen of second, third, fourth opinions. I'm not kidding you when I say fourth opinions. I like to kind of survey and see what my options are, whether it be with follow-up care, whether it be with treatment, whatever the case may be. And then the person who I felt listened to me the best. But let's just say you don't have all of those options. Let's say you've got someone in front of you and you may have one other option, and it's like, okay, do I stick with this person or do I move on? One thing, well, a couple of things. I would say if you make a list of questions before you go to your appointment and that doctor does not take the time with you to answer your questions, time to go. You know, if you get, if you bring someone with you so that there's another set of ears, and again, if questions aren't being answered appropriately, I really think listening to our guts, you can sense it, you can feel it. Like, I don't know why every time I leave there, I just feel a little, I'm disappointed, or I just don't feel heard, or, you know, I think if we'll listen to our intuition, listen to our bodies try to tell us things, then we'll know when it's time to go. I had, before I had my breast reconstruction surgery, I was with a surgeon, and he came highly recommended by another surgeon that I loved and who was just so good for me and with me. So I stuck with him, but he just wasn't hearing me. He kept trying to divert. I knew what I wanted, and he kept trying to divert the plan to what he felt comfortable with. So finally, I reached out to another plastic surgeon and met with him. And when I told him my story, he got teary-eyed. And we were sitting there talking, and he was like, I'll do the best I can. Like, I'll do what you want me to do. And I thought, and then I started to cry because I'm like, yes, this is what I needed. He heard me. He cared about my concerns. And even though he wasn't sure the outcome would be what I was hoping for, my expectations were low. He said he would do it because he knew, he could see that that was what I wanted. That was solid for me. So again, if you're feeling that sensation, like, why am I always disappointed when I leave this person's office? Or why do I always feel I have to explain myself 5 times? Or why do I feel like he's not answering my questions straightforward? I survey my options at that point, because we need to have confidence in our caregivers, in our medical team. We need to. I wrote a workbook called Keeping It Together, a patient's companion through decision making. And I wrote it right after I had made my treatment decisions, so that patients who were making major medical decisions could kind of journal through, or like go through this workbook to kind of think, okay, what do I want? What do I need? What would that team look like? And it was the process I went through, the thought process and the decision-making process that I went through, because it was, like I said, I think we have to have confidence in our medical team, or it's detrimental to our mental health, right? And sometimes our physical health. So that's a long answer to your question.
Well, it's a complicated question, and I'm glad you gave the long answer. We'll shift a little bit to something else, and that is one of the most common ways to control chronic persistent anxiety is with medication. And two of the most common classes of medication that are prescribed in the United States are first the benzodiazepine classes, which is Valium and Klonopin, and second is the newer antidepressants in the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, serotonin, norepinephrine, and triptyline. Which is it? SNRIs.
SSRI.
The SSRI.
Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor.
And maybe we can go over that a little bit. I know that you're looking at our anxiety guide, which we've been working on for about 3-4 months now, and we're trying to cover as many bases as possible. Our first suggestion is, if you're going to get psych meds, get them from a psychiatrist. Do you have any other suggestions as far as benzos and SSRIs, SNRIs?
Well, I'll tell you this. In my experience as a therapist with my clients, what I have found is that psychiatrists tend to be much more aggressive in their prescriptions than general practitioners. And that's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just, it is what it is. But when I went through my experience, I went on medication. I wanted to go on the lowest dose, and because I'm a mental health practitioner, I knew I wanted to try Lexapro. And I wanted to try the lowest dose, and just enough so I could function, because at that point I was homebound because of my panic attacks. I had quit my job. I could not go to the grocery store. I could not go anywhere by myself. I was home for a month. And that's where I was like, okay, Sarah, you've got to figure this out. But I also knew I needed some extra support. So I did go to my GP, and I told him, I'd like to try Lexapro. What do you think? And he said, yeah, let's try it. And then he wanted to prescribe Xanax, which is the short acting, usually Xanax, Ativan, and sometimes even Valium are prescribed as short acting, heavier hitting anti-anxiety interventions. But what I considered was, okay, panic attacks last about 30 to 60 seconds. By the time I pop that pill, I've already worked myself through this panic attack. And so while it might prevent panic attacks in the next couple hours, I just felt like if I can have a longer acting medication that just kind of keeps me at a lower anxiety level for a longer period of time, I'm just going to go with that. And it did really help me. And I was on it for a year, but this was all in conjunction with like my own counseling and doing all the things that I taught you tonight, and, you know, developing these practices that were very intentional to elicit the relaxation response. And finally, after a year, I was able to come off of that medication. So yeah, yes, medication is very helpful. I always suggest to my clients, go with who you feel knows you better. And I'm sorry if that goes against your your recommendations to your group, but with my clients, that's what I recommend. And another thing I recommend before even talking about medication, if they're not on medication, I suggest to them that they go to their GP and they ask to find out if they're low in vitamin D, B12, low in magnesium, because all of these levels, if they're low, will increase your anxiety. And 9 people out of 10 in the United States are deficient in vitamin D, which is huge for mental health. That would, contribute to anxiety and depression. And so exploring that with your general practitioner to see, okay, are these things that could be helpful in managing my anxiety? Like, do I need a vitamin D supplement or to be on a higher, like a prescription level vitamin D for a while? Check that out. So again, long answer. And, but that's just in my experience, that's what's worked for me and my clients. And especially in my area, I'll just add this. Getting in with a psychiatrist, you're waiting months. So if my client's like, yeah, I have high anxiety and I think I want to talk to my doctor about medication, I say, yeah, go to your practitioner, your general practitioner, because they'll get in a week there, whereas they're waiting for 4 months to get into a psychiatrist.
That's a good point. Right now, therapists are jammed, as well as psychiatrists.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's go back to the 1970s, and the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi is coming to the United States, and we're either doing meditation or we're doing biofeedback. Very big on the campuses in the 70s and 80s. Mm-hmm. Any recommendations as far as meditation, biofeedback, anything like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I recommend to pause, to pay attention to what your body is trying to tell you, listening to the cues, getting in better touch with what our body is telling us, paying attention to how we feel after we eat. And that is all biofeedback. That is all biofeedback. And how often are we eating in front of the TV? So we're not even chewing our food real well, or we're not even thinking about how it tastes. And then, we're not thinking about how our body feels after that. So that's one thing. And meditation, there's that deep breathing. When you pay attention, here's what I talk about. I talk about mindfulness. Mindfulness is being present in the moment with all your senses. So if you're going for a walk and this is an exercise, you can make that a meditative walk. You can make that a mindfulness walk where you're walking and you don't have headphones on and you're not listening to anything. You're just walking and you're thinking, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I smell? What can I taste? And how do I feel in this moment? Like, do I feel the warmth of the sun? Do I feel a cool breeze? What does the ground feel like beneath my feet? All of these things are meditative, mindful practices, simple things. You don't have to introduce this hour-long meditative practice into your life and overhaul your life. You can introduce mindfulness and meditation into the life you're already living. And you don't have to do an overhaul, thinking about what you're eating, saying, okay, I'm not going to watch TV for this meal. I'm actually going to pause and think about what this bite feels like in my mouth. I'm going to pause and think about what I can smell as I'm chewing this. You know, we're slowing ourselves down, and you can create a meditative, mindful practice in the midst of simple things. And again, I think oftentimes my clients think, oh my gosh, I have to do all this stuff to get rid of my anxiety, or I'm going to have to quit a bunch of things or make these major lifestyle changes and shifts. But I love how simple it is to bring your anxiety level down, just to make those little shifts, take those little pauses, and just introduce that mindfulness and that meditation into what you're already doing in your life. It can be that simple.
It sounds almost like what Aloysius is talking about here in chat. What do you have to say about just sitting in silence for half an hour or an hour? I found this practice works for me, meaning Aloysius, giving me a lot of inner joy and the ability to solve any problem.
Yeah, we do not have quiet space for our mind. We don't. You can't even pump gas without a screen blaring at you in your face. So we are a noise polluted society, to be sure. So sitting in silence for a half an hour, your brain is like, thank you. Thank you very much. And my family lives in northern Michigan. My parents still live there, and that's where I was raised. And coming from, you know, the south suburbs of greater Chicagoland, and then finally going up north and getting away, I'm always amazed at how quiet it is at night, how dark it is at night. And like these moments are so cleansing and so healing. So yes, if sitting in silence for half an hour or an hour works for you, please, you know, do that. And for those of us who don't practice that, give it a try. You might find that this is amazing. Some people struggle with that silence and they need something to kind of focus them in the midst of that silence, because otherwise their thoughts take them away. So I always recommend, again, going back to like that positive affirmation or an inspirational quote or scripture, where you have that in front of you and you're always just returning your mind to that thought and thinking of your ideas or your thoughts as clouds. You recognize them, you let them pass, and then you return your attention to, you know, what's in front of you, because it doesn't do us any good to fight our thoughts, right? Because our brain doesn't really operate in negative. So if I say, don't picture a purple elephant, the first thing you do is picture a purple elephant, or your brain goes there. So it's saying, don't think, just be silent. It doesn't really work that way. But if you can just say, oh, brain is busy today. Look at those fluffy clouds. You recognize the thought, you let it pass by, and then you return your thought to what you're trying to focus on for that half hour, if you're someone who struggles with that focus or with racing thoughts.
Fantastic. Does anybody else have any questions this evening? Sarah, I want to thank you for your time. There's one thing we're going to do before we leave, and that is we're going to ask you for your help in supporting Prostate Forum, everybody. Of course, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. And with that, can everybody see that? We are, if you can, we love even small checks. If you can mail a check or money order, no cash, please, to Prostate Forum of Orange County. We're at 1519 East Chapman, Box 380 in Fullerton, California 92831. Or you can donate via PayPal at prostateforum.org. Support us. Go to our website. You should be able to find a donation. Zoom costs us money. We pay for Zoom. We pay for YouTube, mailing, Wix website hosting, all of that. Our costs go up every year as your costs go up. and we are 100% volunteer. We don't have any salaries. We gratefully accept donations from required minimum distribution accounts, 401k, 403b, IRAs, and related requirement minimum distribution accounts. For more information, consult your accountant or financial advisor as to how you can help us with that. Leave a lasting legacy of hope for men and their loved ones by leaving us in your will and trust. And you can use these links here to find out how you can leave us in your will or in your trust. I thank you, Sarah, very much, and we look forward to having you back very soon. And if you want to contact the service provider, you'll find her contact information at the very beginning of this presentation. If there are no other questions, I will say good night to everybody and look forward to seeing you again at our support groups. Have yourself a great evening, everybody.
Good night.